You ever have that one moment where your life splits into before and after? For me, it happened one quiet Sunday morning, the kind that smells like coffee and fresh rain, when I accidentally opened a message. I was never supposed to see Dot. Ethan was in the shower. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I would have ignored it. We trusted each other, or at least I thought we did. But that morning, something in my gut told me to look. Maybe it was the way he smiled at dinner the night before, distracted, almost guilty, or the way he'd been guarding his phone lately. Like it was a loaded gun. The screen lit up. A notification. A name I didn't recognize. And then a message that shattered me. Last night was perfect. I can still feel you. My whole body went cold. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My first thought wasn't even anger. It was confusion. No, this has to be some mistake. Ethan wouldn't. He couldn't. But the truth was sitting right there, glowing on that stupid little screen. I remember standing there, staring at the wall, hearing the water running in the bathroom. The sound of the shower, the steam, the normalcy of it all. It made everything worse. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My chest tightened, my throat burned, and I just froze when Ethan stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, smiling at me like everything was fine. I realized something. Sometimes the person you love the most can become a complete stranger in one heartbeat. "Hey," he said, wiping his hair. "You okay? You look pale." I forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine." But inside, I was breaking apart. The rest of that morning was a blur. Coffee, small talk, the sound of birds outside the window. I remember staring at him across the kitchen table, memorizing the way he held his mug, the tiny scar on his wrist, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. Everything I loved about him suddenly felt like a lie. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, my mind spinning. Who was she? How long had this been going on? Was I not enough? I wanted to confront him, but I didn't even know how. What if I misunderstood? What if it really was a mistake? I needed proof. The next day, while he was at work, I opened his laptop. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type the password, but it opened. And there it was. Messages, pictures, emails, evidence. Pages of conversations that told a story I didn't want to believe. It wasn't just a one-night thing. It had been going on for months. They met at a work conference in Chicago. She was married to... Her name was Lily. Every word, every "I miss you," every "can't wait to see you again," it all stabbed like glass, and that's when something in me changed. The part of me that used to trust, to forgive, to believe people's promises, it just shut off. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at him as he slept. I wanted to wake him up and demand answers, but instead, I whispered to myself, he doesn't know that I know. It became my secret, my silent weapon. Over the next few days, I started watching him, not as a lover, but as an observer. The way he texted at odd hours, the sudden late meetings, the extra showers. It was all there, plain as day. I saw everything. I recorded every lie, but I also saw something else. Fear. His eyes would dart around when his phone buzzed. He couldn't look me straight in the eye. Maybe he knew I was slipping away. Maybe he could feel the distance. Then came the moment that changed everything again. One evening, I followed him. He said he was going out with coworkers, just a quick drink after work. I waited 15 minutes, then grabbed my coat and drove. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, but I kept going. Downtown was alive. Lights, traffic, people laughing on sidewalks. And there, across the street from a small jazz bar, I saw him, Ethan, and her. They were sitting close, laughing softly, their hands brushing. I don't remember breathing. I just remember standing there in the cold, rain starting to fall, watching the man I loved belong to someone else. He looked happy, happier than I'd seen him in months. And that's when something in me broke for good. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I just stood there until they left. Then I went home and sat in the dark for hours, staring at the wall. When he came back later, smelling like perfume and whiskey, I pretended to be asleep. But my heart wasn't asleep. It was awake, and it was planning, because sometimes betrayal doesn't end with a confrontation. Sometimes it begins there. The next morning felt like someone had pressed mute on the world. The sky hung grey and heavy, the kind that makes silence feel louder. Ethan hummed softly as he made coffee, unaware that I had seen everything. He handed me a mug, kissed the top of my head, and said, "Got a long day ahead. Don't wait up for me tonight." My hands tightened around the cup. The heat burned, but I didn't flinch. I just nodded, pretending everything was normal while my mind screamed. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't explode right away. It seeps in like slow poison. You smile while something inside you dies. I spent the day thinking about how icily he lied, how effortlessly he built this double life. One where I washed his shirts and laughed at his jokes, while another woman waited somewhere, wearing the same perfume that still lingered on our sheets. Anger became my focus. It cleared the fog. It gave me direction, so I started watching. I kept a journal, every lie, every inconsistency, every time his story didn't add up. I tracked his words, his tone, his movements. I became a detective in my own home. And the more I looked, the more I saw him unraveling. His hands trembled when he poured coffee. He stayed longer in the shower. He couldn't meet my eyes. Guilt was eating him alive, and he didn't even know I could see it. That night, as he slept, I stared at him again. But this time, I didn't see the man I loved. I saw a stranger, fragile, weak, and I whispered to myself, "You think I'm blind, but I'm just getting started." Days passed. He kept lying. I kept pretending. Every fake smile, every forced "I love you" became another brick in the wall between us. Then one night, something shifted. Ethan came home late, later than usual. He looked nervous, tense. He didn't speak, just poured a drink and stared into space. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, work stuff," he muttered, but he wasn't fooling me. His hands shook as he lifted the glass. Something had happened. Later, when he showered, I checked his jacket pocket and found a folded letter, a woman's handwriting. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan. My husband suspects. Please don't call me." I read it over and over. So this was how it ended. I should have felt relief, justice, but instead I felt nothing. Because when someone destroys you and then loses what they destroyed you for, it doesn't heal you, it just leaves you hollow. That night, as he slept, I looked at him one last time. Maybe he thought it was over, that he could rebuild what he broke. But trust doesn't rebuild, it decays. I didn't want revenge just to hurt him. I wanted him to feel what I felt, the helplessness of losing control. So I started changing. I stopped asking questions, stopped waiting, started smiling. It scared him. He sensed the shift, the distance. "You sure everything's okay?" he'd ask, and I'd smile, touch his face, whisper, "Everything's perfect." But behind the calm, I was rewriting everything. I moved money quietly, saved messages, photos, proof. I didn't know what I'd do yet, but I was preparing. Then came the final lie, another business trip, Chicago again. This time, I was ready. I booked the same flight, same day. When he left that morning, I waited 10 minutes, grabbed my bag, and followed at the airport. I watched him from afar. The crowd, the noise, the smell of coffee, everything felt surreal. He wasn't meeting her. She was gone. He sat alone by the gate, staring into space, looking defeated. And for the first time, I felt pity. Not forgiveness, but a faint understanding. Maybe we were both just running from the same thing. Loneliness, fear, emptiness. I didn't approach him. I watched until he boarded, then turned and left. Rain poured hard on the way home, blurring the city lights. I pulled over, shaking, realizing I wasn't angry anymore. Just empty by the time I got back. I knew what to do. I packed his things neatly into a box and left it by the door. When he returned, 2 days later, suitcase in hand, I was waiting. He froze. "What's going on?" "You're free, Ethan." He didn't argue, didn't lie, just stood there, silent, defeated. Sometimes the quietest goodbyes are the loudest. That night, I sat by the window, listening to the rain. The world outside kept moving. Cars, laughter, life. And maybe that was the point. Some endings don't need revenge. They just need courage. But I knew this wasn't over. Because secrets like his never stay buried forever. After that night, the house felt emptier than ever. Every sound echoed the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge, the soft whisper of the wind through the curtains. Ethan was gone, yet somehow his presence lingered in every corner. The dent on the couch where he used to sit. The second cup I no longer filled with sugar. The curtain that still swayed each morning as if waiting for him. I thought I was free. I thought it was over. But the past has a cruel way of finding you. One quiet Saturday morning, while cleaning out the closet, I found an old shoebox tucked beneath stacks of magazines and office files. It wasn't mine, I knew that instantly. My pulse quickened. A familiar dread crawled up my spine, the same one I'd felt the day I first learned he'd been lying. I hesitated, staring at the box, dust gathering on the lid. For a moment, I considered throwing it away unopened, but curiosity, or maybe survival instinct, made me lift the lid. Inside were photographs. Old, faded ones, printed from film. At first glance, nothing unusual. But then I saw his face. Ethan's he was standing beside a woman I didn't recognize. Not Lily, not anyone I'd ever seen before. The woman had her hand on his shoulder, smiling, while Ethan looked at the camera with an expression I couldn't place. Not guilt, not love. Something else. Something closer to fear. I turned the photo over. On the back, written in blue ink, Portland. 2014, the year he disappeared for a few weeks on a business trip. The one I never questioned. I kept flipping through the stack. More pictures, Ethan with the same woman. Then a few with a small boy, maybe 7 years old. The boy had Ethan's eyes. My fingers went cold. The photo slipped from my hand. He had a child. I gathered the pictures, spread them on the table, scanning every detail. In one of them, behind them, I saw a street sign, Marion County. I grabbed my laptop, typed it into Google. Within seconds, I found an old article, a missing persons report from 2014. A woman named Claire Donovan and her 7-year-old son disappeared after leaving their home in Portland. The last person seen with them was a man described as a close colleague, Ethan Ward. The name hit me like a punch. My Ethan. The room went silent. I read the article again and again, each word cutting deeper. Ethan had never mentioned Portland, never mentioned Claire, never mentioned a child. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor, surrounded by those photos, piecing together every strange moment, every unanswered question, the late nights, the secret calls, the nightmares that woke him in cold sweat, and suddenly, everything connected. Ethan hadn't just betrayed me. He'd been hiding something that could destroy both of us. The next morning, I went to the police station. I didn't even know what to say. I just handed the officer the box and asked if the 2014 case had ever been closed. He looked at me for a long moment, then shook his head. No, we never found the bodies. No conclusive evidence of foul play. The man last seen with them, what did you say his name was? Ethan Ward, I whispered. The officer froze. Then, quietly, he pulled out an old file, flipped through it, and showed me a printed sketch. It was him. Perfectly him. He was questioned, the officer said. But there was never enough to charge him. I walked out numb. The cold wind slapped my face, but I didn't feel it. Who was the man I had loved? That night, I opened my phone, scrolling through old photos of us. There were gaps, weeks when he'd been on business trips. No pictures, no calls, no trace, just silence. I started writing everything down, dates, locations, times, patterns, one by one. The pieces began to fit together. Then came the final clue, the kind that chills your blood. Around the same time Claire Donovan went missing, Ethan changed his phone number. He moved apartments, and he changed his last name. I turned toward our wedding photo on the wall. He was smiling in it, that gentle, trustworthy smile I'd once believed in. But now I saw something else in his eyes. A secret. The rage I'd felt before was gone, replaced by something colder, fear. A deep, quiet fear that made the walls feel closer. This wasn't about love anymore, or betrayal. This was about survival. And one thing became terrifyingly clear. If Ethan ever found out I knew the truth, he would never let me walk away. After leaving the police station, I drove without direction. The road shimmered under the streetlights, rain tapping against the windshield, and every drop seemed to echo the chaos pounding inside my chest. I couldn't believe it. The man I had trusted, slept beside for 3 years, could be connected to an unsolved disappearance from a decade ago. I pulled over, staring through the fogged glass. Somewhere deep inside, a cold, burning determination took root. I needed to know the truth, not because of curiosity, but because if I didn't face it, I would never be free. That night, I opened my laptop and dug through everything I could find about Ethan Ward. Not much. He was more careful than I thought. His name, degrees, job, history, all clean, all perfectly aligned. But then I caught something small, an old email address tied to a company he once said had shut down. I traced the domain, found an archived invoice, delivery address, Marion County, Oregon, my heart froze. The same place from the photo. The next morning, I booked a flight. I told my friends I had a work trip. No one questioned it. Spontaneous travel was part of my job in media. But the truth was simple. I needed to see it for myself. Marion County was quiet and cold. Tall pine trees, distant houses, the kind of silence that hums in your ears. I rented a small roadside motel room, just big enough for a bed and a desk. Every night, I stared at those photos again, zooming in, comparing details, trying to match the angles. 2 days later, I found it. The house from the picture. The paint was peeling, the windows boarded up, and a tilted for sale sign swayed in the wind. Standing across the road, my heart thudded in my throat. I walked closer. The padlock on the door was rusted, vines crawling up the steps. The air was too still, unnaturally still. I pushed the door open. It groaned, long and heavy. The smell hit me immediately. Damp wood, mildew, and something older. Something stale. In the corner sat a rocking chair, gently moving, even though there was no wind. I shined my phone light around. The walls were stripped bare, but a few things remained. A child's shirt, a small music box shaped like a star, and on the wall, a faint, brownish handprint. I stumbled back, trying to breathe. Then headlights. A car stopped outside. The beam sliced through the window. I froze, heart hammering. A black sedan. Engine off. Door opened. Someone stepped out, tall, broad shoulders, steady gait. I couldn't see his face, but I didn't need to. I knew that silhouette. Ethan. He stood by the porch, motionless for a few seconds. Then, in that low, gravelly voice I once found comforting, he said quietly, almost to himself, "I knew you'd come." I clamped my hand over my mouth, forcing myself not to breathe. He looked around slowly, eyes sweeping across the broken window, right where I was hiding. Then he smiled, a slow, cold smile. And in that moment, I realized this was only the beginning. That night, rain fell like a curtain draped over the city, heavy, relentless, cold enough to make every step feel like walking through a storm of memories. The streets shimmered with red and white reflections. Ethan drove in silence, his jaw tight, eyes fixed on the road ahead, though his mind was clearly somewhere else. I sat beside him, clutching the edge of my coat, my heart pounding as if it already knew something was about to break. We had fought earlier again, the kind of fight that doesn't start with yelling, but with silence, with questions that hang in the air like ghosts between two people. He had been distant for days, shorter calls, guarded glances, a smile that no longer reached his eyes. And then there was the perfume light, expensive, the kind that doesn't just accidentally cling to someone. "Ethan," I finally said, my voice just loud enough to rise above the hum of the engine. "What are you hiding from me?" His hands gripped the wheel tighter. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. The wipers moved back and forth, steady, rhythmic, merciless. Then he spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper. "There are things you wouldn't understand, and you don't need to." That sentence hurt more than a confession ever could. It wasn't denial, it was a wall. A wall he built on purpose. I turned to him, my voice trembling. "You promised you'd always be honest with me. You said there would be no secrets between us." He didn't look at me. His eyes stayed on the road, but I saw it a flicker, a tiny crack in his calm facade, a shadow passing across his face. I promised, he said, back then. Back then? 2 words. That's all it took to change everything. Something inside me broke. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, to tear down whatever he was hiding, but something held me back. Maybe fear, or maybe the sudden, brutal realization that love wasn't enough anymore. We turned onto a small road near the old bridge, where the city lights faded into darkness. Ethan killed the engine, and for the first time that night, he looked at me. His eyes were tired, not guilty, not angry, just tired, like someone who'd been fighting too long. "Do you trust me?" he asked. I hesitated. It should have been an easy answer. It wasn't. Before I could speak, he leaned closer, his voice low and sharp. "If anything happens, if anyone asks about tonight too, say you were home. Promise me." My heart stopped. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" But he didn't reply. He opened the door, stepped out into the rain, and disappeared into the dark like a man walking toward something inevitable. Minutes passed. The rain got heavier. My breath fogged up the glass as panic rose in my chest. Then, from somewhere in the distance, came a sound, a sharp, cracking noise, like something breaking, or maybe a gunshot. When Ethan returned, his face was pale, his shirt soaked through, and his eyes empty. He said nothing, just started the car and drove off. I sat still, tears mixing with the rain on my cheeks, realizing that whatever had just happened out there in the dark, everything had changed. That night, love turned into something else, something I no longer recognized. And the man sitting next to me was no longer the man I once knew. The next morning, the sky was a flat, heavy grather, kind that pressed down on the city and made the air feel thick. Sunlight didn't stream through the curtains like it usually did. It just hovered there, dull and lifeless, barely touching the kitchen walls. Ethan sat at the table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. He wasn't drinking it, just staring into it like it might show him a way out of whatever he'd gotten himself into. His shoulders were slumped, his shirt wrinkled, a faint trace of mud on his cuff. He looked like someone who hadn't slept, someone who couldn't. I stood in the doorway, watching him. He didn't even notice. The morning silence was so loud it made every small sound, every tick of the clock, every breath between us feel like a confession waiting to happen. "You didn't sleep?" I asked softly. He blinked, startled, then shook his head. "Couldn't, just had a lot on my mind. About last night." That made him stop. For a second, his jaw tightened. His eyes lifted toward me just for a moment. What I saw there made my stomach twist. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was guilt. Pure, raw guilt. He didn't answer, just stood up, grabbed his coat, and said, "I have to go." "Where?" "Work," he replied, his voice to even. But I knew he wasn't going to work after he left. The silence in the house turned into something else, something breathing, pulsing, watching. I waited for a while, then went to the closet. His jacket was still damp from the night before, and when I reached into the pocket, I found it. A second phone. It wasn't locked, not completely. One message glowed on the screen. "Everything's been handled. No one suspects a thing." My hand went cold. My breath caught. I took a photo of the screen, then placed the phone back exactly where it was. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just scared of losing him. I was scared of him. The day crawled by. I didn't eat, didn't speak, didn't move much. Every sound made me jump: the hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards, the wind brushing against the window. I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were listening, that the whole house had become a witness to something neither of us wanted to admit. That night, Ethan came home late. His clothes were soaked, his hair dripping, the faint smell of smoke mixed with rain clinging to him. He gave me that same half smile, the one that used to calm me but now felt rehearsed. "You okay?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "I'm fine," I lied. "You?" He looked at me for a long time, too long. His eyes searched my face, like he was trying to read what I knew. Then he smiled again, thin, tired. "Everything's fine," but nothing was fine. That night, while he slept, I sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop open. The glow of the screen painted my face blue. I typed his name into the search bar, then the name of the bridge where we'd stopped the night before, South River Bridge, and there it was. Local man missing near South River Bridge. Car found abandoned. No signs of struggle. Investigation ongoing. My blood ran cold. The timestamp on the article was from last night. I read it again and again, the words blurring through tears. I covered my mouth to keep from making a sound. The realization hit me all at once: whatever happened out there, Ethan was part of it. Maybe even the cause. When I finally looked at him, he was still asleep, his breathing slow, his face calm. The man lying next to me wasn't the man I married. He was someone else. Someone who carried darkness with him everywhere he went. I whispered into the quiet, barely audible, "You think I don't know, Ethan." But I know now, and as I sat there in the dark, I understood something terrifyingly clear. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because the moment you discover the truth about someone you love, the real story doesn't end. It begins. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling while the house sank into silence. The clock ticked louder than usual, like it was counting down to something I wasn't ready to face. Ethan slept beside me, breathing slow and steady, his face so peaceful it almost felt cruel. How could he rest so easily after everything that happened? After what I saw at that bridge? Every time I closed my eyes, it replayed the dim lights, the sound of water rushing below, and that missing woman's face flickering in the glow. I could feel it in my gut. Ethan was hiding something far worse than I'd ever imagined, and whatever it was, it had the power to destroy us both. The next morning, he acted like nothing had changed. He smiled, kissed my forehead, made coffee, said good morning like the world hadn't cracked open under our feet. If I hadn't known what I saw, I might have believed him. But now, every smile looked like a disguise. Every word felt rehearsed. When he left for work, I watched from the window, the coffee mug burning in my hands. I wasn't going to survive another lie. I needed to know the truth, even if it killed me. So I followed him. Not because I didn't trust him that ship had sailed, but because fear does strange things to you. It makes you brave. It makes you cross lines you never thought you could. Every morning, I waited 10 minutes after he left, then got in my car and followed. He was careful. Always alone, always quiet. He knew the city like the back of his hand, like someone who'd lived 2 lives, and I was just starting to see the one he'd kept hidden. One afternoon, he stopped at a small bar downtown, one of those places where the lights never work right and the air smells like old beer and regret. I parked across the street and watched through the windshield, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Ethan sat in a back booth with a man I didn't recognize. Grey hair, leather jacket, the kind of man who'd seen too much and didn't care anymore. They talked for a long time. I couldn't hear them, but I saw the man put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Then Ethan nodded. And that was when I knew whoever my husband was before. That man was gone. I lifted my phone and tried to take a picture, but my hands were shaking. The image came out blurry, distorted by the neon light, but it was enough. Enough to remind me I wasn't crazy. That night, I waited for him to come home. The house was silent, lit only by the glow from the kitchen lamp. When the key turned in the door, my pulse stopped. "Where were you?" I asked quietly. He froze. "Just work," he said, shrugging off his coat, "at a bar downtown." The shift in his expression was instant, from calm to cold. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. I just held up my phone, showing him the photo. Silence, heavy, suffocating silence. Then he smiled, but it wasn't his real smile. It was the kind people wear when they're deciding what to do next. "You followed me?" "I had to," I said, my voice cracking. "You're hiding something, Ethan. Tell me the truth. Are you involved in what happened at that bridge?" His eyes darkened. He looked like someone I didn't recognize. "You don't understand," he said finally, his voice low and tired. "Some things, you're better off not knowing." "No," I shouted, tears spilling down my cheeks. "I've lived in your shadow long enough. You owe me the truth." He stared at me, a long, hollow look that made my stomach twist. "The truth doesn't save anyone," he said. "It only burns everything down." Then he walked past me, up the stairs, slow and heavy. The bedroom door shut behind him, leaving me standing there, surrounded by shadows and silence. I sank to the floor, shaking, crying, not out of heartbreak this time, but realization. I'd gone too far to stop now. Wiping my tears, I opened my laptop and started searching. Articles, police reports, old case files. And there it was, a name. Jonathan Miles, former cop. Worked with Ethan years ago. I froze. The man from the bar, my pulse went wild. Ethan wasn't just keeping secrets. He was tied to something much bigger, something darker than infidelity or guilt. I looked up toward the stairs, toward the closed door of our bedroom. His shadow flickered under the light, long, warped, ghostly dot. And for the first time in my life, I saw it clearly. The man I loved might be the one I should fear the most. After that night, the house felt colder, not just in the air, but in the space between us. Ethan barely spoke to me anymore, and I didn't try to start conversations either. There was a distance now, invisible but sharp, like a thread stretched too tight and ready to snap. But I didn't stop. I kept digging. Every time he left the house, I searched. I went through his desk, his coat pockets, even the trash. Little things, tiny clues. I collected them all. Then one afternoon, I found something that froze me in place. A hotel receipt from a quiet town outside the city. The name on it wasn't his. It was Jonathan Miles, that name again. The man from the bar, the one Ethan used to work with. The more I searched, the darker it got. His emails were full of deleted attachments, half-erased threads, strange codes. I managed to recover fragments, enough to read parts of a message that said, "North River Bridge." No evidence left. Clean up done. Clean up. My chest tightened. What did that mean? An accident? A cover-up? A murder? That night, while Ethan was in the shower, I opened the drawer under his desk and found a small black external drive, password protected. I didn't dare open it at home. The walls already felt like they were listening. So I took it to a late-night cafe. The barista on shift was a kid from the university, a computer science major who once helped me unlock my old phone. I told him it was just a forgotten work file. He didn't ask questions. It took him less than 20 minutes to break in. When the folder opened, my world stopped. There were hundreds of photos, videos, documents, things that shouldn't exist. Images from a crash site at the North River Bridge, blood under headlights, police tape flapping in the wind, and in several of the photos, Ethan was there. He wasn't helping. He wasn't investigating. He was involved. I couldn't breathe. My hands went numb, my vision blurred. The kid looked at me, confused, asked if I was okay. I just nodded, closed the laptop, and walked out into the rain. It was pouring, cold, relentless, like the sky itself wanted to wash everything away. I walked without direction, my mind spinning. Every memory of Ethan replayed in fragments. His laugh, his lies, his hands on mine. All of it felt like someone else's life. When I finally got home, he was asleep, peaceful, like nothing had ever happened. I stood there, watching him for a long time, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger or sadness, only disbelief. How could a man who carried so much darkness sleep so soundly beside me? I didn't cry. Tears had no place left in me. What replaced them was silence, the kind that comes after the truth finally hits, when there's no going back. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, laptop open, documenting everything I knew. Every photo, every file, every piece of evidence. I saved it all in a folder and named it The Bridge. Outside, rain hammered against the windows. Inside, something colder grew in me. Not rage, not grief, but purpose. A sharp, icy kind of clarity that burned steadier than any flame dot, because now I knew. The truth wasn't just a wound. It was a weapon, and when the time came to face Ethan, only one of us would walk out of the dark. After that night, I wasn't afraid anymore, just cold. Not the kind of cold that creeps in through an open window, but the kind that grows inside you when the truth finally settles in your bones. The kind that makes your hands steady, your heart beat slow, your fear vanish. Because once you've seen the monster behind the mask, there's no room left for fear, only purpose. My laptop screen glowed faintly in the dark, casting thin blue light across the room. On it were the files, pictures, messages, reports, everything I needed to destroy Ethan, to end the version of him the world believed in. I stared at them for hours, fingers hovering over the keyboard, my reflection staring back at me from the glass. I wasn't sure what scared me more, what he had done or what I was about to do. Outside rain hit the window in rhythmic bursts. The house was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the clock ticking relentlessly on the wall. Each tick felt like a countdown, a slow, patient reminder that time was running out for both of us. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Instead, I watched the night dissolve into grey light. When Ethan came downstairs the next morning, he looked normal to normal. He made coffee, read the paper, even hummed under his breath, like he was trying to convince himself that the world hadn't shifted. But I saw it. The subtle twitch in his hand when he lifted the mug. The slight pause when he caught my eyes across the kitchen. He knew something had changed. He just didn't know what. I didn't speak much that day. I moved around the house like a ghost, wordless and calm. The silence between us grew thick and heavy, pressing down on him more with every passing hour. By evening, I could see it eating at him. He tried to start a conversation, but his words came out fractured, uncertain. One night, as I brushed my hair in front of the mirror, he walked into the bedroom. His reflection appeared behind mine, pale, tense, eyes searching. "Is something wrong?" he asked. I met his gaze in the mirror, my face unreadable. "No, I'm fine." He hesitated. "You've been avoiding me. It's like you know something." I turned to face him, smiling faintly. "If you're that nervous, maybe you should ask yourself what you're hiding." The silence that followed was brutal. You could hear it, thick, alive, suffocating. He didn't answer. He just walked out, shutting the door softly behind him. But that night, long after midnight, I heard noises, the creak of the basement door, drawers sliding open, boxes shifting. He was searching for something. I knew exactly what the flash drive. I stayed in bed, my body still, but my pulse sharp and steady. He was panicking. He knew I'd seen something. He just didn't know how much. When he came back upstairs, I pretended to be asleep, but I could feel him standing in the doorway, watching me. Half his face was swallowed in shadow, his breathing uneven. Then came his voice low, rough, almost trembling. "What did you do?" I opened my eyes, met his gaze. "What about you, Ethan? What did you do on that bridge?" He froze. I saw it then. Real fear. Not the kind of fear you feel when you're caught in a lie, but the kind that comes from remembering what you've buried. "You don't understand," he whispered. "It's not what you think." I sat up slowly, the sheets rustling like a warning. "I saw the pictures, Ethan. I saw you there. I saw the blood. You really think I don't understand?" "I understand better than you ever did." He swallowed hard, eyes darting away. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It was an accident. Jonathan, he took care of everything. You just stayed quiet," I cut in. "You stayed quiet to protect yourself, to bury the truth, to pretend that nothing happened." He took a shaky breath, and for a moment his mask slipped. The confident, charming officer everyone admired was gone. In his place stood a man cornered by his own guilt. Then his tone changed. His voice grew harder, colder. "What are you going to do? Call the police. They won't believe you. They'll believe me, the decorated officer, the hero, not the paranoid wife who's losing her mind." I smiled faintly. "Maybe, but evidence doesn't lie, Ethan. You know that better than anyone." We stared at each other for what felt like forever. The rain outside kept falling, steady and relentless, drumming against the windows like a warning. And in that moment, I realized something. Whatever love we once had died long before that night. What remained now wasn't love. It was fear. Ethan turned and left. The door slammed behind him, echoing through the empty house like a gunshot. I sank into the nearest chair, shaking, breath shallow. But I didn't cry. I was past that. I knew what would come next. Ethan wasn't the type to surrender quietly. He had power, connections, a reputation to protect. If he felt cornered, he would fight back, and I had to be ready, so I made sure of it. I encrypted every file, uploaded copies to a secure cloud, set an automatic release timer. If anything happened to me, every photo, every recording, Every email would be sent directly to the police and the press. That night, as I sat by the window watching the rain blur the world outside, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just a woman betrayed anymore. I wasn't the victim of his lies or his choices. I was the witness, the survivor, the one who carried the truth and wouldn't let it die in the dark. And when dawn finally broke, soft light creeping through the curtains, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. The final confrontation between Ethan and me hadn't ended that night. It was only just beginning. The sky was still a deep shade of grey when I heard the sound of tires crunching against the wet pavement. The sound was deliberate, cautious, like whoever was inside already knew what awaited them. A car door slammed, and then came the footsteps, slow, heavy, uncertain. Each step thudded against the porch, carrying the weight of everything we hadn't said. I didn't need to look. I knew it was Ethan. The door creaked open, and a rush of cold air swept through the living room, carrying the smell of rain, gasoline, and something else, regret. He stood there in the doorway, dripping wet. His hair plastered to his forehead, his eyes dark and hollow like a man who'd just crawled out of a grave. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The clock on the mantel ticked softly in the background, marking every second of the silence that hung between us. Then his voice broke the stillness, low, trembling, stripped of all the arrogance it used to carry. "Did you send it?" I met his gaze, my face calm, steady. "Yes," I said. "If you were planning to fix this, you're too late." His jaw tightened. A flicker of anger flashed in his eyes, but beneath it I saw fear. Pure, raw fear. "You don't understand," he said, his voice cracking. "It's not what you think." I laughed softly, bitterly. "You've said that too many times, Ethan, and every time it meant nothing." He took another step toward me, fists clenched, then slowly unclenched them. He wasn't threatening me, not anymore. He was defeated, worn out, hollowed by the truth he could no longer hide behind. His shoulders slumped. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I just wanted to keep things safe. I didn't want you to hate me." I stared at him, the man I used to know, the man who had once been my home. "You lied," I said quietly. "You manipulated. You hurt everyone who tried to get close to the truth. That's not safety, Ethan. That's destruction. And now it's come for you." He didn't answer. He just stood there, breathing hard, as if my words had stolen the last bit of air from the room. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows, steady, rhythmic, almost soothing. It was strange how calm the world could be while everything inside you was breaking. I stood up and grabbed my car keys from the table. "I turned everything in to the police," I said. "All of it. You and Jonathan. It's done." He didn't stop me. He didn't even move. He just stared at me with that haunted expression, the look of a man who had finally realized he'd lost everything. Not because someone took it from him, but because he'd destroyed it himself. "You know I still love you," he whispered. I froze. The words hit me like a cold wind. For a second, the world tilted, memories flooding back, mornings filled with laughter, late night talks, his hand on my back as we danced barefoot in the kitchen. For a second, I saw the man he used to be, not the stranger standing before me. But that man was gone, buried under lies and fear and the choices he could never undo. "I know," I said softly, "but love can't save what's already rotted." He looked like he wanted to say something more, but the words never came. and I didn't wait. I turned, opened the door, and stepped out into the cold morning. The streets were slick with rain, shining under the faint blush of dawn. The first rays of sunlight were beginning to pierce through the clouds, thin, hesitant, but real. They fell across the wet pavement, painting the world in silver and gold. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel trapped. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt free. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I couldn't stay. A few days later, the news broke. Ethan Turner, detective, hero, husband, arrested for obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, and accessory after the fact. Jonathan's confession followed soon after, each line of his statement peeling away the mask Ethan had worn for so long. The world finally knew what I'd known all along. I watched it unfold from the small apartment I'd rented by the ocean. The place was bare, one table, one chair, one bed, but it was mine. Through the open window, I could hear the waves crashing against the rocks below, steady and powerful, as if the sea itself was washing everything clean. The air smelled of salt and freedom. At night, I'd sit by the window, recording my thoughts, not for anyone else, but for me. For the woman who'd survived. I used to think love could fix everything. I said one night into the recorder, my voice quiet, steady. But sometimes, love is what blinds us the most. I lost almost everything to learn one thing. No one can save you but yourself. I paused, listening to the sound of my own breathing, to the ocean outside. The truth, I continued, doesn't heal you. It doesn't make the pain go away. It just sets you free enough to start again. And that's enough. Outside, the sun broke through completely, lighting up the sea until it looked like it was on fire. The horizon burned gold, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I closed my eyes and let the warmth touch my skin. I wasn't his wife anymore. I wasn't his victim. I wasn't the woman waiting for someone else to do the right thing. I was free, and sometimes freedom doesn't come when you win. It comes when you finally stop fighting, when you turn away from the wreckage, step into the light, and never look back. Because the truth is, not every ending is meant to be tragic. Some are just meant to set you free.